I can. Oh, Isaac's also there. Nice.
Good morning, everyone from Kuala Lumpur. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to this chit chat session on BHR in Tech. This week, we're going to be talking about who are the next generation human rights and digital rights defenders in this digital era. My name is Mariam Lee. I am the strategic project manager at the IO Foundation, and I am also the project officer for the BHR in Tech project, currently run with collaborate in collaboration with Global Partners Digital, uh, and we are part of the Global Network Initiative for this advocacy on business and human rights in the tech sector. Before we begin, we would like to invite the people in the audience if you would like to join us in voice. We are more than happy to bring you up here on stage for the conversation, a casual conversation on who are exactly the next generation of human rights defenders. When we're talking about next generation, essentially we're talking about this era of the digital that is that is becoming the defining characteristic of our generation in terms of technological advancement. So I would I would give a few seconds for anyone who are in the audience who would like to come up here on stage. You may indicate your interest in the chat. We have from the IO Foundation, we have Isaac, who is already on stage. We have Len Manriquez, who is the programs manager at the IO Foundation, already on stage. We have the CEO of the IO Foundation, Jean Carroll. We have Nicholas Yip. We have Ivan Tan. We have Eric Reynolds. We have Brian Bong. And we have Abdel here in the audience. If you would like to come up here on stage and join the conversation, you are more than welcome. So let's begin with a little bit of introduction. What do we mean by next generation human rights? The I Foundation has identified programmers as the next generation human rights defenders. Traditionally speaking, human rights defenders have been characterized as people or activists who are actively demanding something in the public sphere. Their backgrounds usually are multidisciplinary, more of a social science combined with other technical backgrounds, be it uh, scientists, who are active in environmental rights, for example, or healthcare workers or professionals who are actively advocating for good public health care. So traditionally, what we understand as human rights refers all the way back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, born out of the aftermath of World War II. The fundamental human rights expressed there is that all human beings are created equal. They all have rights. They are all born with these rights: for expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to be to from disease, freedom from poverty, freedom. Essentially, all these rights are essential for us to live not just as human beings, but to live well as human beings on Earth. Uh, Human rights are interconnected, and human rights are not uh, they don't work if you only have one. You don't just go about your life having being a human being, being and not having freedom of expression being connected to your right to housing, for example. Because if you cannot voice your demands for your right to housing, or for your right to healthcare, for your right to education, then you will not be able to realize those fundamental rights that allow you to live and to live well. So in the digital era, human rights, as we've seen, not just gets transposed onto the online or digital space, but they literally take on a digital form. Uh, John, in his introductory speech earlier at the beginning of this, or at the opening of this TechUp this weekend, um, talks about the first principle at the IO Foundation, which is I am my data, you are your data. Essentially, what it means is that we are treating the data as part of us, and we want to treat data having the same rights as the human beings that are the source of that data. If we can accept the fact that our data is us, not just a part of us, it's not separate and it's not separate from us, then whatever happens to that data affects us. So human rights protection in the digital world means protecting the digital entities that represent us in the digital world. So that's what it means when we say human rights in the digital era literally takes on the digital form. Whatever digital entities that represent you there, if they are not protected, if they are prone to harm, if they are prone to breaches, they are prone to be duplicated and exploited without your consent. They are out there for anyone to just do whatever they want with them. Uh, I mean, whatever the intention, malicious or not, it doesn't have to even to be malicious. The fact that the risk is out there is already a danger. So two things that are highlighted in this sense is that, is there a language for this new way of thinking? Is there a language or taxonomy of digital harms that we can use to refer to when we talk about human rights protection in the digital space? Then this is important because this is nascent and I wouldn't say unprecedented, but yeah, if we ask anyone the question 10 years ago, what do you think technology will look like today? I think a lot. I've received comments that they didn't realize that digital technologies especially, will be used in such a way today, where it's used not just to profile you, but to profile you for specific commercial purposes. In the sense that you and your data becomes the commodity that's being bought and sold. And the social implications of that is that whoever gets to buy those information then gets to literally buy you. Either buy you through money or buy you through elections, making, steering society in certain ways that would be beneficial, or that would be favoring whoever has the power and the money to do so. So, as we all know, not everyone who has power and money have the best of intentions. And if we don't get back control of our data, if we don't get back control of our digital selves, then the power to decide, the power to make decisions will always be made on behalf of us, rather than us making the decisions for ourselves. Secondly, is there the money or even the motivation to move towards this direction, to move towards this realization that we need frontliners, not just in the physical place, but also in the digital space. And if the frontliners during a public health crisis, as we are in right now, would be all the medical professionals and medical doctor and healthcare workers, the equivalent of those frontliners in the digital space would be technologists, programmers, and people who are practicing in this industry. Because they are the people who are designing the tech. They are the ones making the tech coming to life. They are building the tech. They set the rules. In the discourse on international trade, the the United Nations have even written in a document from their meetings that they have recognized that it is businesses, tech businesses especially, who are setting the rules. Essentially, they are setting the governance standards for how people behave or how people can act in the digital space. So, and these are the rules that are made by private entities and not necessarily coming from consultation with the public. So the public essentially have to just follow those rules if you want to use those services or if you want to use the tech products. And we have very little say in terms of um, how how we as in like our digital selves interact, or how are they protected inside their ecosystem. And so two things that I would like to bring forward to discussion before I open it up to the rest of you. I don't want to also talk too long. First is there is a need for a change of paradigm. Okay, the current data regime is characterized as more restrictive rather than more progressive. It is characterized as more centralized rather than decentralized, in the sense that the people controlling the data, our data, are a certain set of people that we don't have access to. And so if we want to move towards a more decentralized data regime, we put the control of the data. The key is in the control of the data back to ourselves, because that's who we are. Essentially, you wouldn't want other people to have control over where your body goes to, or where parts of your body goes to, and what kind of protections are being set for your body. And from a top-down approach to a bottom-up approach, there is a need for devolution of power in the digital world, in the sense that whoever holds data now holds the power. And even though we know that our data is us, how much control do we even have over our data? If we want the examples that have been mentioned throughout this morning's TechUp, if we want our Facebook to delete our data, what are the technical assurances that we have that Facebook actually did it? What are the consequences or the penalties that we would be experiencing if we want to take back control of our data? We say that, hey, we don't want you to do this anymore. My data belongs to me, and it should be me who decides what happens to it, and not you. And the tech industry moving from specialists to multidisciplinary. We see the trend right now for more and more cross-discipline interactions in the digital world, where we realize that technology is a tool. So but right now the tool is becoming the master of the person who are using the tool, the people who are using the tool, rather than we becoming the masters of those tools. So essentially, those are the things that needs changing. The second part is, how could this play out? This could play out in two ways, in the legal sense and in the technological sense. From the legal point of view, it seems that we do need political will for people in politics to champion this change in paradigm that we were just talking about, to change the way that we are viewing our data, and then how does that get reflected into our laws. So if we're talking about technological innovation, if our technological innovation is now at 4.0, our social innovation should be one step ahead of that at least. We shouldn't be, our social or instruments shouldn't be behind what technology is already at. And the second part is on the technology sector, which is why technologies are important to be recognized as the next generation of human rights defenders. Because if we want to get out of this crisis that we're in, this digital rights crisis that we're in, they are the ones who are best equipped with the knowledge and the capabilities to us out of it. With those points, I would like to open up the discussion to those who are already on stage. We can start with Len and we can start with Isaac. Those in the audience, we're opening up the invitation again. You are very much welcome to come on stage and join us. Join the conversation in voice. Len,
Hi. Yeah,
hello.
sorry. Yeah, good morning from the Philippines. I think it's some people are in different time zones, so
Yeah.
good day or good evening to all of you. I was reading Eric's comment. If only the world had one global digital organization to educate and advocate. I was actually thinking if it's if it's a cynical comment or skeptical comment, or if he means if it's a wish or something, because of course we're extremely diverse and with different um realities. A wish. Okay, thanks for sharing. Yeah, so actually we were exploring this thought, and probably in some sense programmers might be like a small sector that we would think like a small player, one of the workers pool in the technological sector. But we came up with this vision, or this idea, that programmers are the next generation of rights defenders, simply because they play a very crucial role in in the technology sector as things develop. They're not gatekeepers yet, of course, because they're more of the workforce, but they are the decision that they make, on what to code and how to code it, actually affects how a certain software may develop, with or without the gatekeeping function yet. This also comes from the framework that the public space is changing from a public space without the internet into a public space that is provided by the internet. And programmers or people working in the IT sector really plays a high role there. So it's the same way as how in the non digital public space, where media plays a key role in filtering information that goes to the public. So, in the same way that programmers have the power to actually influence how new technologies develop into tools that either protects or fulfills rights of people, or the representatives of themselves, or harms them. So that's where we're coming from with this hope of influencing more programmers. In similar ways in other industries, excuse that I'm always using the media as an example, simply because I have like some experience in that field. Journalists also has gatekeepers when they pursue their stories, and they're always not on the same level of thinking as their editors. And the editors, just like the programmers have, also gatekeeps what gets published or what gets developed in the end. So even if a programmer probably would push for something that does not um let you I mean that protects privacy, but then there are interests of the company that would like to sell some data and whatnot, then the programmer is struggling with that in the same way that there are information that singular journalists would like to pursue in the context of the story that he is reporting, but there are interests, market and business interest of the media outfit that affects that journalistic decision. So we're in my purview, it's coming from that perspective. Of course, this too is a wish and a hope for the IO Foundation, and we're bringing this more and more into the conversation to strengthen it and to encourage programmers to play a more active role in defining our new societies, because we're definitely not going back to analog. We're gonna definitely go more and more into the digital space, and there's just no turning back. COVID has given us, that speed of how much this will take of our lives. And yeah, and we need, like what Mariam said, we need to be at 4.0, not, two steps or maybe five steps behind as technology is developing into our lives. So maybe that's just what I wanted to say for now, and we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Len. I mean, the ideal is that we're actually one step ahead. But if we can't be one step ahead, then at the very least, we should be at par with technological innovation. Definitely not behind. I'm glad to see Eric has joined us on stage. How are you, Eric?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'd love to hear from Isaac first.
Yeah.
He was here first.
Okay, cool. Isaac, hey, we come to you now.
Okay. Um, as just to build on top of what Len was mentioning earlier, you technology, once you build it and you ship out, it's no longer just lines of code, it's no longer zeros and ones. It takes on a life on its own, and that impacts people in real life. And this whole thing about, we sharing, and then you have the, things come up like oversharing and all of that. People ask you like, but what does that even mean? I can share what I want. I've got nothing to hide. And then I will ask you the question, why not give me your ATM PIN? Of course, you got something to hide. It doesn't always have to be malicious. Everybody's got something to hide. So if as users, we need to care about how these things are built and shipped out to us. And as developers, we need to understand our responsibility when we ship out stuff. Just the way your car comes from your Perdua or your Myvi comes from factory, it has gone through some crash tests and all of that. Somebody has certified that that car has fulfilled certain safety standards, and makes it safe for you to get on the road with it. It's the same way you want something similar for whatever you ship out, and we're trying to get programmers to understand their responsibility. But then again, the work doesn't just lie on them alone. You come on the policy side and you ask, but how do we go about this? Because when I go to a programmer and I ask them, or I tell them, code me human rights into software, or build me a software that's respectful of human rights, the programmer might A, look at you like you're crazy, or B, figure out some way to interpret it the way they know how and just put it out. Well, what if there was a way for us to agree on one specific document, one source of truth, that when I want to code a software that is respectful of people's rights, go here, and everybody just go there because we all agree that those things are respectful of people's rights, and that's how we want to deploy them. So I don't want to, get into, technicalities and all of that, but that is the basis of what we're talking about. And maybe I'll circle back later with more.
Thank you, Isaac.
I
On to
think
you.
that
Yes.
I think that was well put, Isaac. Going back to the line of code, that really is the DNA of every program, available on this planet. And I mean, imagine if Indian and Filipino developers working for these large monopolies and these conglomerates, we're talking about like Facebook, Zoom, Agora, if they went on strike, and how detrimental that would be to the world, and it would get the world's attention. It would, because I've always been at the thought of, in order to have digital evolution, you have to have digital revolution first, in order to, what you were saying, assess what the rules are. Because right now, as it stands, there really aren't any rules in this space. And it's pretty big, and the corruption is evident. I'm talking about the corruption in the essence, and I call it corruption, of just how much money on average Indian and Filipino developers are getting paid by EU and American software companies. It's ridiculous. And also by the Indian companies who are subsidiaries of these, American and EU companies. It's ludicrous. It's unbelievable. I mean, how can you live on those type of wages and work, sometimes the whole week, 6 days, or the whole week, 12-hour days? It's just, ridiculous. And I've always been one to pay fairly, and it's just not happening. These software companies aren't paying fairly, and that's the issue. That is the biggest problem right there. So my thought about an actual revolution, I don't know. I think it's going to come to that someday.
Eric, is it okay if I ask you, what do you mean by corruption in this sense? Where exactly is that coming from?
Well, the corruption that I think it's corrupt when someone who is making, I don't know, billions of dollars on their software, and the line of code, again, the DNA is coming from developers who are getting paid on average maybe under $500 a month, if that. I think that's corrupt in itself. That for me is corrupt, against, when I'm talking about human.
Yeah, that falls under labor rights issues. Sounds to me like a lot of wage theft. Um, the wage exploitation there is yeah. But I thought that because the word corruption could also be meant as money going to somewhere they're not supposed to go. Do you see that also happening in the tech sector, in the tech world?
Oh, as far as I mean, embezzlement happens all the time. I mean, it's in the news all the time. I'm on Clubhouse listening to this gentleman named Tyler. He's got I can't remember the name of the room, but it's every single day he's talking about embezzlement and corruption, and not just in cryptocurrency. With this Canadian NFT, I don't know who went overseas and all of a suddenly just died while on his honeymoon, things like that, stuff that's just weird, strange. And then now there's an investigation into it. I mean, this is just ongoing. And a lot of this doesn't get reported by the press. You have to dig, you have to actually want to be aware, to learn about these things going on. And when you do learn about them, you should be uncomfortable. Nobody should be uncomfortable on this planet right now, and that, with anything, it's just everything is moving so quickly. Where is the accountability?
Just to, if I may, just to add on top of that or expand on that point, when you want to talk about corruption from an angle of, let's say, for example, companies that build software and ship out software on large scale are required to get certain certifications. I'm talking from here, let's say we are able to, agree on certain standards or certain things that should go in it for it to be certified as, digital rights approved, quote unquote. You now have to talk about, just the same as we're dealing with, to talk about lobbying, back channeling, and bribery, and all, just because people want to get certified to ship out. Those are things that we also need to think about, along those lines, if you want to talk about corruption. And because we're talking about business here, that topic will always have to come up, because when you look at business, the motivation most of the time for all of this, treating workers poorly and all of those things is basically money. It all boils down to money. Somebody trying to increase their margin, somebody trying to just, something is always, it always boils down to money. So the question now is, how do we, or are we looking into how to solve these problems, and what will be the framework, and what would it even look like in terms of having checks and balances to make sure that because we might be pushing for all of these things, standards and all of that, we have them now. What happens after we have them? That's also a conversation that could be had. I just wanted to add on.
I agree. I agree. I think that, there is no such thing as a third world country that the US and or the EU are, infiltrating, because it's not a third world country when there is a resource. Now that resource has become the digital realm, the digital space. It's the people who are suffering, they are living third world, the result of third world, these antics. And I think that this is where accountability is most important in the digital space, is to question the Microsofts, to question Zuckerberg and Bezos and even Elon Musk, keeping the conversation going. Like you said, Isaac, this conversation, it can't stop. It needs to keep on going. When you stop talking about these things, then it just infests. It just gets bigger.
Eric, you used the word digital space earlier. Wait, you used the word. Sorry, your phrase was the resource is the digital space. I think the space is the space. It doesn't become a resource. Just like how yeah, the realm, the world, the reality, but point being here is looking at, if we want to take the bigger picture of what's really going on, looking from a political economy point of view, what we have is that this is a world that runs parallel. The digital world is a world that runs parallel to our physical world, and it reflects our physical reality right now because of the data that we feed into that world. And so the resource is actually us. The resource that is being put into that digital world that creates that world comes from the physical world. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I was mentioning earlier about like why there is a need for like a paradigm shift to start thinking about the root cause of this problem. The whole thing that we've talked about, the social issues, the labor rights issues, the corruption and the governance issues, those things happen in the physical world, in the physical reality that we live in. And then it gets translated into the digital world because it just reflects it. And then it amplifies it. Because anything that happens in the digital world, it just gets, 10 times faster, 10 times more intense. So I'm viewing this in such a way because of Shoshana Zuboff's book on the age of surveillance capitalism, where her basic argument is this: what we have right now, the political economy of the digital world, is basically run on capitalism, and that is a reflection of the physical reality, because the physical reality also runs on the capitalist economic system. And in a capitalist economy, what you do is you take raw materials, you turn it into a commodity, and then you sell it into the market. Now, in the physical world, the raw material we take from nature. We exploit nature, turn it into a commodity. We take a tree, for example, turn it into furniture, and then we sell it. and then we make a profit. In the digital world, who the raw materials are actually us. Every time we post a Facebook status, every time we post a tweet, every time we create that digital reality of ourselves online, a digital profile of ourselves online, regardless whether or not it actually reflects our real life, it doesn't matter. What we put in there, what we build in our digital profiles, that gets built for us. And then there's also the matter of how technology also creates a profile of us without our consent or without our knowledge. Sometimes, whatever, we're just, when we think we're just playing an innocent game, an innocent online game, and then it turns out the online game is actually profiling us based on whatever, based on our activities on that platform. Facebook profiles us based on our activities on that platform, on what we like, what pages we like, what kind of words we use on the everyday, and then they sell that profile. That raw material is us. That profile is the commodity, and the commodity that they're selling is essentially selling that predictability. Because what advertisers want is accuracy. They want to target as accurate as possible so that they can make sales, as much sales as possible. And that is what's being sold. So that is the political economy of the digital world right now. And it's whether or not we want to accept it, I guess. Are we accepting that this is the most make sense or common sense explanation of what's really going on? Because what we see happening in the digital world, the labor issues that we are talking about, all the exploitation, the corruption, it stems from the fact that data, the commodity, right? The data that has been made into our commodity, it no longer belongs to us. The same way most people don't have the access to control that means of production. Basically, you don't have any say in terms of what gets to be manufactured. In the digital world, we don't get any say what gets to be manufactured. Tech companies get those say. Tech companies get to decide what becomes of us. How predictable are you? How accurate is our digital profiles of you? And because we don't have access, because our relation right now to tech companies is of user and master, I guess. I could use that term. Like, we're just there. We're just following those rules, and they are the ones setting the rules, and we just have to follow unless we want to completely plug out, like unplug from the system. So what do you guys think?
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I get that, and you get that, and I think everyone in this air meet gets that. However, what the issue is that the average American, I could probably say, cannot separate themselves from social media. Social media is their life.
Yeah.
They'll say that, there are people on Clubhouse and Green Room who are on there 24/7. They sleep with Clubhouse going.
Yep.
And their phones plugged in, They identify themselves, and if you were to take that away from them, which of course is a whole other topic for another session, is what if you removed software? What if you removed social media? I mean, what would happen? This pandemic is a perfect example, right? You remove us going out and to concerts and all of this stuff for a year and a half, and people get depressed. People become somber. They get angry, right?
They get channeled to a different space.
Right. So the question is that with technology, is this addiction going to get better, or is it going to get worse? And from this addiction, this identifying yourself, the newer generations versus me. I'm a Gen X, so I was around before the internet. Can they separate themselves from YouTube and from TikTok and Clubhouse and all of this? And if you think, like, going back to the part about the revolution, using that too as a means of saying, you know what, we're all going to go on strike here. The in India or Bangalore, Bangalore is going to go on strike. Delhi is going to go on strike. What does that mean for the rest of the world? It's like the pandemic.
Yeah. So let's come back to the topic of how tech builders, programmers, technologists, as next generation of rights defenders, their awareness of what rights need to be protected has to be there first. And John made a comment in the chat about how this is, this has everything to do with the way that technologies are being educated. They are being trained to look at a problem and solve the problem from a technical perspective, and not necessarily connecting it to the larger picture. That's one part. The other part is that from the user side of things, users don't get a say on how technologies are being built. If I were a Grab or Food Panda or Uber rider, for example, the way that the algorithms decide how much do I get paid from this system, or how much compensation do I get out of this, there's pretty much no way for that to happen unless you use the technology itself against them. That the equivalent of a strike or a worker strike in the physical reality, in the digital reality, would be to turn off your phone. How plausible is that? As you said, Eric, like, how do we switch off our phones? How do we switch off our social media? How do we switch off our platforms? And then there's a matter of the legal system. Our legal systems, do they recognize contracts that are made, the relationship contracts between the technology user and the technology provider? The gig workers on these gig platforms, the relationship between them as the workers on the platform, using those platforms to find jobs, the relationship with the technology provider they called it a partnership, but it's not actually a partnership in reality, because they don't actually have a say in terms of like how the partnership should be going on, how the partnership should take place. So the discussion on the legal side of things is like, where are our rights? Where are our rights to jump in? Where is the opportunity to put in our rights, to reflect those rights? Labor rights protection, for example, inside these contracts. Thinking along those lines, and then when we do think about those kind of issues, the technologists will be like, and then receiving this feedback, technologists receiving this feedback, and they're like, okay, how do I code it into the tech? So that's why we see what's happening right now. We're not discussing solutions yet. Right? This is like a discussion of like what the description of what's going on. But essentially, I feel like everything comes back to that. Everything comes back to the fact that we should be owning our data, because our data is us. That digital representation of us is the one doing, brokering all these deals or representing us on the digital space. If anyone gets control of that, then how do I exercise my rights in that space? We can't, because we are not in that space literally. We are in that space digitally. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop there before I talk too much. Eric, before we go to you, I would like to ask the people in the audience again if they would like to come on stage and come and join us in this conversation. It sounds like a clubhouse conversation, to be honest, but that's for another topic. Anyone? Okay, let me invite. I see some students, lecturers, lawyers in the audience. Please feel free to come on stage and join us in the conversation. While we're waiting for their responses, Eric, you would like to add and jump in?
Yeah, I on the note of about data mining and owning your own data too as well. Education is a big part of that. I taught a term at a California university for communication students, and the first thing, it was web development. The first thing I asked everybody was, can anybody stand up and tell me exactly when you put and when you fill out the URL locator, you put your web address in there, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Not one of them could answer, not one. I mean, that's the basic, the browser is the basic tool, right, for accessing the internet,
Right.
for the consumer and stuff, not one of them. And that is a huge problem right there, because people don't know, oh yeah, I hear this all the time. I'm just going to send you that password via email, and I don't care. It's my bank, whatever. It doesn't matter. That type of thing. And that stems from the lack of awareness and the lack of education. They don't know this. Who teaches that?
So one of the things that we say here at the IO Foundation is that we should, as users, as technology users, we shouldn't have to become computer scientists or technologists in order for us to know that our rights are being protected. These rights should be protected by design already. I shouldn't have to worry about me going on Facebook and not knowing if my data there is going to be used against me. So that's what we mean when we say that programmers played such a critical role. Like, they need to actively insert systems or processes, or however it is that they think, into the application that we use to protect us by design, to protect users by design. And that's where we that's the core of the advocacy here currently. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some development. I mean, even if it's not too even if it's not too fast or too quick, the idea is slowly getting out there. One of the reasons why we wanna talk about these things more often is so that we could also find out how best to communicate with technologists, so that they can understand this role. Whether they like it or not, they are there. They are there to be this human rights defenders in the digital space, being those frontliners, whether they are ready or not. In fact, they're there.
I mean, is it too far-fetched for the browser developers, Mozilla, Google, all of them, Apple and stuff, in order for you or a consumer to download the browser, they have to watch a short video,
right,
from beginning to end, and then you get to download.
And what would the video contain?
Oh, I think you could imagine, internet safety, protocol, data, privacy. I mean.
So you mean this is for the users or for the developers?
The users.
Okay. Like a video information of how to protect themselves online.
Exactly. There's nothing like that. I mean, a 5-year-old could download, Chrome, and they probably do.
Yeah, and assuming they can read already. Let me take a look at the chat, see what people are saying. Okay, we have a comment here from Nicholas. A lot of language, and there's a whole lot of language. Basically, it's made very restrictive requirements for IT providers. Okay, no, sorry, that's okay. Humans. Okay. Some comments here are just, strengthening what we've been talking about in the past. What we've been talking about so far. John commented here, humans are sensors for the machine through smartphones. When you leave a review about a restaurant, you are translating an emotion or an opinion into a machine-readable format of something that otherwise no one can quantify. Yeah, precisely. That's what happened. The device is just a portal to capture the things that have been invisible. Shoshana Zuboff talks about this a lot in her book. Essentially, what happens is that our thoughts, our experiences are turned into data. And that data now is visible not here in the physical world, but data is visible in the digital world. And that data is being processed and analyzed and used and distributed, God knows where. And that's our relationship right now under the current data regime. Our relationship with our data is that it is separate from us. Even in the legal documents that we've seen so far, the scope of our relationship between the human and the data entities that represent the human is that it is outside of our bodies. So what needs to happen is that shift towards acknowledging that our data is us. Because of all these examples that we see. That's the reality. I see a question, actually.
I like what Jean was saying about smartphones, mobile devices. I mean, when mobile devices, spewing data or allowing data, with that capability came, that just changed everything. That really.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean that's an example of what we've just talked about. Yeah. Actually, I wanted to make the point that this is important to be realized so that we can better protect human rights in the digital space. Essentially, that's what we all aim to do. If the same way we protect humans with universal standards of human rights, there should also be a universal standards that protect digital rights because of this new reality that we live in. And the reason why this is new is because we haven't been asked to confront this type of things before. When I was a lot younger, using MySpace, I didn't realize that social media was going to turn out like this. When we were using Friendster and MySpace at the time, it was just for us to, it was just a platform for us to just connect with people. But now it's no longer to just connect with people. We have become the commodity we can become the commodity that is being traded online. And how does the law now come in? Legal practitioners, how do they now come in? Now that technology has arrived at 4.0, are our legal systems or are our social systems equipped to be at par with that technological innovation? As far as I can see, the answer is no. I don't know if anyone would disagree with that here in this session right now.
Nicholas does comment. He says the 2-year rollout is indeed too short. Yeah, it's way too short. And old Nicholas, on the AirMeet thing, when you're on mobile, yeah, you're limited to what you can do.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for addressing that. This 2-year rollout is referring to what exactly? Accreditation? Could someone explain a little bit if anyone has any idea?
Nicholas is probably typing real fast right now.
Yeah, I've invited him to the stage a few times.
I don't think you can because
Okay, all right.
Well, he's on mobile. I don't think he can.
Ah,
Accreditation, it's a whole bunch of steps,
uh-huh.
and they've made this whole thing very bureaucratic. So and those steps vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. You can't exactly. I don't think there's one template for all of them, except for, I mean, those of course that establish international standards that we already know of. But when you start to localize some of these things, it gets very tricky to figure out unless you're focusing on one specific jurisdiction. As far as Malaysia goes, I'm not exactly sure how that goes, how that'll play out. But again, when you look inside Malaysia, you realize that accreditation at any level, the steps vary from ministry to ministry, from agency to agency. Like there's no even baseline flow of how things should go on a general. And this is from my experience. Anybody is free to correct me if that's not the case. But from my experience, you go to one ministry, it's one procedure. You go to another ministry, it's a whole different thing, and all of that. So that really doesn't help.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand here. Before we close the session in about 5 to 10 minutes, why would 2-year be too short? Can someone help to clarify that? What makes an accreditation process too short or too long? I'm learning so much here.
Yeah, here somebody's raised their hand too. Jean has.
John, yep. Come on stage, John.
Yeah, sure. So
Hi.
let me put the camera on as well. So from my understanding, I haven't looked into the documentation that Nicholas was mentioning, but if he's mentioning a rollout of 2 years, what that basically means is that whichever preparation the engineer has to go through before they can actually get accredited only takes 2 years. If you think about the changes that involves, not only at the personal level of the things that I need to learn, but also the accreditation exams that I have to go through and the changes in the processes inside businesses that they have to go for the business to also be accredited and to put into place all the enforcement mechanisms and to train all the government officials that are going to be enforcing blah, 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 blah. 2 years is ridiculously short. It's never going to happen. And no wonder they had a lot of backfire because reality isn't that a government issues a regulation and the universe freezes and you can spend 2 years just preparing yourself and you don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep, you don't need to tend to your family, you don't need to go for holidays because you can spend 2 years just to do that. That's just not happening. So 2 years, realistically, you're talking about maybe you can spend 5 to 10% of those 2 years at most doing the actual accreditation. Run the numbers, that's a very, very small amount of time. If you want to impact any of these things, I don't think you're looking at less than a decade, because what you really need to be tackling is I don't want to call it a moral. I'm trying to find a better word. You're trying to tackle with the motivation behind as to why you want to do this. So think about it this way: the first shamans, before we had doctors, the first shamans did not decide overnight that they were going to have the Hippocratic Oath. That took centuries until enough people got into what then became medicine. And then they realized there was a number of things they could do better. And that conversation started sparkling. And at some point, the critical mass was there for that to germinate into what we understand today as the Hippocratic Oath. That didn't happen overnight. And any doctor spends years in academia, in the educational pipeline, learning and internalizing that. So in 2 years, that's just not happening. Specifically, people who are already already in systems of habit. You already have a mechanism. You already have your habits. You already have your SOPs in the organization. You already have your systems for implementing, to design, to architect, to implement your meetings with your team. To do, it's just not happening in 2 years. You're required to be able to first influence the educational pipeline so that the new engineers come already with that mentality. And as they position themselves in the market and they get to reach into positions of managerial responsibility, then they can influence the conversation. Then they can be in positions in politics where certain changes can be enforced. It just doesn't happen overnight. I don't understand how they could think about 2 years and not expect any backlash. I mean, I understand much better the circumstances. Yeah, exactly, the instructions. I mean, and no one needs to say that whatever is the document that they issue, that version 1.0 works right off the bat. As in the amount of modifications and adaptations that you're going to have to do? No. That's why you need to start from the educational pipeline. It's the origin of everything.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for explaining, John. He's left the stage. Anyone else would like to add before we go to this question from Len? Okay, we can go to this question from Len. What protections should be in place in case there is abuse in regulation? This question is directed to programmers or technologists in general, on and off the stage. Isaac and Eric, would you like to take that?
Isaac, you can go ahead and handle that. I've said it.
That's a heavy one, and Len is right. This can take us an entire day. We can actually have this conversation for an entire day, but we're not going to do that. Regulations, software is a very funny thing. Code, once you ship it out, it's I don't even know what word to use right now. I'm at loss for words to use right now. So what to think of it like a blob, it just grows, it just takes on its form and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, especially when it's, let's say, open source software, for example. Somebody takes a branch of that software and builds something else into it, and then it becomes something else with an entire new interface and all of that. Or, somebody changes a bunch of, lines of code and, and all of that. My point is, when you talk about regulations at the baseline, you have to now look at, okay, who at the certification process or at the incorporation process, you incorporated as a software company, so you are expected to follow certain guidelines before you ship out software. Okay. You have to set up some kind of mechanism for who gets to look through this software to certify it before it even gets shipped out. When you're done with that, then you now talk about, okay, what do we do when there's abuse of these regulations? Now, there are many ways to go about it. So far, the models are not exactly working. We have the model of fines. That doesn't exactly work. You slap them with a fine, somebody pays the fine, and people just move on to business as usual, or they find ways to hide it. They find newer ways to hide what they're doing, or they find ways to, they find another way of doing it.
Budget for it.
Exactly. It's in the budget. Marketing, and they call it marketing, quote unquote. Some people call it marketing budget, some people call it operations, and people call it all kinds of things. Point is, that in itself makes it, difficult. But then again, back to the question of what protection should we put in place? Protections is first and foremost. You have to look at the user side. The user is the person who ends up most of the time getting affected by whatever gets shipped out. Now, user data. Let's start there. How do we protect user data? And if there is this abuse, what do we do about it? How do we even protect this thing, this blob that has taken a life of its own? So it calls for everybody to have a conversation on this. It's not a straightforward question for me to be able to answer, even coming from a programmer's angle. And I'll give the floor in a bit so that somebody else can chime in. But the question is protections. Who are we protecting? It can't just be blanket. We have to specify who we are protecting. Then we can now talk about how, and then that will lead us to where we're going. So if we to somebody else to chime in, and I will circle back with a different point if we have more time.
Thanks, Isaac. I would like to welcome Jay here on stage. Jay Sharma. Hey, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Jay.
So I've followed it for a few minutes, but sorry, you may have already covered this. I think that before you start going into things like remedies, and making sort of statements such as, our rights are under threat, and I'm not challenging that necessarily, but I think it's important to define what it is we mean by our rights and how these are broken. If you think back in a more general context, the concept of human rights as is currently constituted is relatively new. Yeah? Forget about digital rights. Human rights as a universally accepted concept is relatively new, and the means for enforcing it are relatively weak. So start from a position of realism, and if you're going to advocate for these things, advocate from a position of deep knowledge about the terrain that you're traversing. This is, I know it's the 21st century, and we are all digital humans who we are our rights and all the rest of it. I heard all that. That's all. Yeah, it's true, but let's be a bit more precise about that. I have some other things to share and comment, but I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Jay. We did speak about the need for education because there isn't anything, especially global.
Sorry to jump in. Forget about the education bit. You already know. We can all take the easy option and just say education. But what are you going to educate people on? I think we ourselves in this kind of, let's call it safe space, need to be quite rigorous about this. What rights are being infringed? And I'm not saying they're not. I am very concerned about this, which is why I'm here. But I think we need to be precise.
Yep, agreed. Jay, if you don't mind me asking, maybe top 3 of the.
I think Jay.
Oh, he's left the stage. Yeah.
I would like to follow up on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Could I make a quick follow-up on what Jay just asked?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jay, you are totally right in terms of what needs to be. One of the elements that we need to do is work on the concrete steps, and that's actually in the making. As part of one of the initiatives, which is the Universal Declaration of Digital Rights, one of the elements that we're looking into is reformatting the conversation to stop looking into human rights themselves and instead looking into data rights. Because the difference is, if you're going to be involving technologies into a technological sector, the concept of human rights it's qualitative, not quantitative, and therefore encoding it is just a waste of time. It's just not going to happen. You can only try so much, and there's been working groups that they have tried in the past, and they with a certain degree of success. The thing is, the whole thing cannot be encoded the way it has been looked into because of the nature of what you're trying to protect, which is humans. And in technology, it's not the human that you're protecting, it's the data that represents the human. And so when we look at the rights, the way we look at it from the TIF perspective is, if you establish a framework of human rights based on what are the harms that can be inflicted into a human, then when you look into the digital aspect, you look into what are the harms that can be inflicted into the data. And then you can inform what is going to be the rights that you want to build to prevent those harms to happen into the first place. And that is an ongoing research that we're doing. We don't have a full list the taxonomy of that. That's part of the taxonomy that I was mentioning before, that requires to be there for technologies to be able to put this into the educational syllabus so that they can start getting behind. Because that's the thing. 2 doctors can decide about what's going to be the
Jay's back.
Oh,
Hey, Jay.
what happened?
What happened just now?
I'm not sure.
I think, I think maybe Sean hit something.
Since we got kicked off. John?
He should raise his hand again, probably.
Yeah. I think if I hand it over to John, somebody's going to get kicked off stage. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my suspicion. My suspicion is that there's a maximum amount.
Okay, I'll leave.
That's interesting. It's supposed to be.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
It's not that. It's up to 10. The thing is, only one attendee and/or speaker can be raised hand, can be on stage at one time. That's it.
Right.
Just the raised hand one.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so I'm happy to drop the stage quickly for Jay. What I was trying to say is that answering the question of Jay is that that's an ongoing research. We're working on that, and one of the ideas is to start presenting the results during TechUp. That's going to be part of the function of TechUp, to provide that, not only the result of the research, but also the training as a first stage, as a kind of a beta testing of how this could be playing out in a larger scale later on education.
Okay, thank you, Jean. I'm inviting Jay onto the stage again. Apologies. Please continue, Jay. You are muted.
No, I'm sorry, but I think Jean's intervention was very, very useful. I've just put down something in my note in the chat thing. So I think when my background is kind of fighting for the rights of the most vulnerable and so on. Yeah, very often it's kind of like refugees or people with indeterminate status and that kind of thing. Whether it's because what we're talking about is also, in a similar way, we have to anchor it, I think, to some idea of territoriality because of different both jurisdictional and regulatory frameworks, right? So we need to try to find a way of making these things more universal, just like human rights are meant to be respected and enforceable universally, but actually the what you face in terms of your ability to have those rights respected, protected, and you actually enjoy it depends so much on the jurisdiction you find yourself. So we need to conceptually, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just making an observation. I think we need to tackle this, because if you have very good data protection laws pick a country, Switzerland, right? I've got no idea, but if you do, but if your rights can't be enforced in Switzerland, the server might be in Switzerland. How do you navigate that? So I think it's not just a question of training. I completely understand what Jean was saying earlier on about integrating this within the thought process DNA of programmers, so that when they are programming something, it's like tech for, and we people have heard of tech for good, yeah. So it's kind of, tech for good has got all these principles. So if people are well versed with tech for good and they believe in the no harm kind of principle, they will be aware of it. and that's how they will behave. This is what we aspire to. But well, certainly at the stage where I'm at, I think it's very useful to talk in terms of like, okay, rights, or how are you going to regulate the thing? How are you going to regulate these rights? How do you enforce the rights, which is and then you've got the awareness activities coming out of it. Yeah. So I think I probably said enough, so I'll shut up.
I do like the methodology behind that, Jay. You're saying that, create the laws, if you will, create the standards, or reinvent the standards, whatever it is, to protect and or enhance whatever is there, the accountability, and then people will become aware of it. It promotes awareness. It's a quicker way of doing, not quicker, more effective way.
Yeah, and to add on to what Jay was talking about, there is this philosophy that says the map is not the territory. So whatever we think of legal systems, like we think of legislations, for example, they are actually a map. They guide us, but they don't necessarily reflect the reality. And sometimes maps are being drawn based on the wrong territory. Drawing a map of Malaysia, you see it in the form of 2D, and then you mark certain places. This place has a lake. This place has a mountain. But then when you actually go to that place, and then you don't see the lake and you don't see the mountain. And sometimes I feel like that's what we're seeing here with regards to conceptualizing legal protections of human rights in digital space, because the way that we are mapping the digital space is not based on the digital territory. It's based on our physical territory. The way that we understand human rights in this world, in this reality, in the analog reality. When in fact, the way that data behaves and the way that digital entities behave in that digital reality is different from the analog reality. I need to go on a plane to go to a different country, whereas my data can be anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds. So that's an example of how the map is not matching up to the territory which is the digital. I just wanted to add that analogy. Jay, would you like to comment, or Eric? Or Len or Isaac?
I'm always happy to jump in and comment, and but sometimes it's a bit too much, right? So I don't mind.
We still have about 10 minutes.
It's never too much. It's never too much. We should all feel uncomfortable.
No, yeah. Okay. Since I'm here, so I really like the map analogy, because we can see this in a kind of like very very visual representation. The earliest maps of the world are nothing like what the Hubble telescope or whatever it is, can kind of, so they look quite different. Yeah. Where we are at is where the territory is also kind of morphing. It is not terra firma. It is terra inflexis. It's kind of like it's a changing landscape as well. And I think that makes it quite difficult. And with the advent of things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, any number of other things. Fingerprint or what do you call it? Retina, that thing, recognition, in order to gain access, biometric data in passports. These things have kind of grown. The technology has outpaced even our ability to imagine this new landscape. So I think this is part of the danger. But but I think that because we are in this strange planet where everything is either kind of gas or liquid, and we're not really sure whether the Mars rover is really able to navigate this thing. I think one of the things we can hold on to is that thing that Mariam was talking about, which is this is who we are. This it's the kind of, we have to center this thing on the human, and let's hold on to that sense of what is it to be a human being. And so that's what we possess. Now, just my last point would be whether that is an individual right or a collective right. And I think I will just leave it there as a kind of like a rhetorical thing. I hope that there is somewhere in the program that we can come on to talking about this kind of thing. Is there? I have no idea.
Title of the next topic.
Pardon?
Could become the title of the next topic, and then we can deep dive into that rabbit hole.
Okay. I mean, I leave it to you. I don't know whether there is space in the program to carry on.
We do TechUp monthly. TechUp happens monthly, and this is something that we definitely consider and talk about in terms of making this space available monthly for us to talk about. It's definitely something we can talk about. I actually scheduled a meeting with you on the platform. If you have 10 minutes or so, we can just talk real quickly before you head off.
Yep, I'm echoing what John is saying in the chat, that the BiT, as in BHR in Tech, is definitely the space for that, the platform for that. We're pushing boundaries here because somebody's got to start thinking along these lines, because even if we can't see these problems right now, we don't know what kind of challenges that we're facing in the future. And if we talk about the need to, as a society, to have the social instruments of the social mechanisms to be one step ahead of the technological mechanisms that we use in our daily lives, then we need to start pushing those kind of boundaries, because otherwise we'll always be, 1 or 2 steps behind. When technology is at 4.0, we're now at, as a society, legally speaking, we're like at 3.0 or 2.0 at best. Well, Isaac, 0.5 is a little bit, I don't want to be too pessimistic. So everyone, we have 8 minutes left, but I would like to open open the discussion to people in the room who have been following from the very beginning. Actually, maybe I could call them by name. Brian, Abdal. There's a new person here. I see Rajendra Katal. Welcome to our discussion here. We have about 7 minutes into the discussion. We can. Please come on stage and share with us your thoughts.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to say that, if this were held on Zoom, I don't think I could hang on this long.
Really? Why is that?
It's just because of the conversations, they're just so heated and so wonderful, not in a debate kind of way, but more in a parallel way, that AirMeet gives us the opportunity to carry on the conversation through a private meeting or in the lounge or at a booth, which is great.
It's like the video version of Clubhouse, isn't it? It's like Clubhouse.
Yeah, I feel limited on Zoom.
Thank you for that comment, Eric. Len is back. Hey, Len, are you okay to talk?
Yeah, I guess so. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, not really. Sorry if my background's really noisy right now. It's there's like some family gathering around me, and the connection is just so bad. Actually, I don't want to raise any other concern at this point, looking at the time. But yeah, we can continue the conversation in the lounge or in some of the tables. I'm also looking forward to continuing this process of inquiry, and discourse.
Len, did you stop talking? Len?
I hope that we could
Yeah,
have.
she did. Share her connection.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
so sorry. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to chat more.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Len. So on that note, how can you keep in touch with the IO Foundation? One of the ways is through TechUp. TechUp is a monthly event in the middle of the month, every month. So the next TechUp would be in August. What's the exact date? Well, I have to check the calendar. Could maybe Isaac or John could help me to put the link for KRF events calendar into the chat. For information on our activities and what we do and the programs that we run, you can go to the website the iofoundation.org to be involved with our activities. We're just an email and a message, or even you know even a message on LinkedIn away. There are so many communication channels that we have established nowadays. It's incredible. We also have a GitHub account. You can go to github.com/the I Foundation to see, to look into our repositories, what we already have written and published out there. Anything else I'm missing to mention, Isaac, Len? Anything else I'm missing that to mention before we end the room?
I think that'll be it for now. Jay asked if there's space for TechUp oh 07 to explore this one in a bit more detail. I'm not sure about space,
We
but
can
we
hang
can
out
meet at
in
the
the lounge.
BIT table at the lounge. You
We
just
can
go,
hang out.
there's a BIT table at the lounge. You can just sit there and somebody will join you and we can talk more on this. Yes,
Yep.
that's all.
There's like an all-in-one conference space here on AirMate. We're very lucky to use it. I don't know what else is going to come up these days. Technology is advancing so fast. Okay, so with that said, we're going to wrap up this discussion. Thank you so much to those who have been here. We really appreciate your input, and we really appreciate you coming, and making the conversation very, very exciting. And we'll be at the lounge. If you would like to find us there, go to the lounge and we'll be there and we can continue. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a nice lunch, dinner, break, wherever you are. Take care.